This is the way to do it. We're doing the Solent. Portsmouth and Southampton. We're just cruising into Hyde, one of the sink ports. Nigel Davies has very kindly lent us his Sunseeker Hawk 34. Hey, you know what? This is a great British success story. The Braithwaite brothers, they were selling outboard motors in the 60s. They thought, things are not good enough, we'll make our own. They now sell over £19 million worth a year. Yeah, some of the biggest fun yachts in the world, made right here in Britain. Now that's a success story. You know this was used in the James Bond film? It was! And you did like that. And we're going to see a boat that's completely different. But you'll like it. During the 80s, they did a survey into things you most remember in your life. The shooting of JFK came first, Man Walking on the Moon came second, and the raising of the Mary Rose in 1982 came third. There she is. The Mary Rose, still in the same cradle that was supporting her when she came out of the sea. She's vitally important. She's in a giant laboratory. They're still treating her, and she will be treated for about another 15 years. We can't go in there. Nobody can. It's important because we didn't know anything about Tudor shipbuilding. And one of the things they found out is that she didn't have overlapping planks like they used to have on boats, a bit like roof tiles. She had planks end to end, a bit like bathroom tiles. And that was so she could have gun ports. She was the first purpose-built gunship. Henry VIII's flagship, built in 1509 to 1511, and eventually sank in 1545. I thought she went down on a maiden voyage, but she didn't. She'd been blowing the French apart for years, and she was engaged in battle just off Portsmouth with Henry VIII watching when she eventually went down. Sadly, they had nets on it to stop the French from getting on board the ship. It also stopped the English lads from getting off. Anything up to 700 men went down with her, crammed into that little boat. The other important thing about her is there were 19,000 artifacts found on the boat. So we now know an awful lot more about everyday Tudor life. Just look at that! You know, I'm so gratified by the dexterity of my planning today. It's absolutely, what? Have I had a dictionary for breakfast? Actually, yes, I have. I read it all, and by the way, the zebra does it. I have learnt a few things this morning, actually. Like, for example, the Mary Rose didn't sink on its maiden voyage. I thought it did. Nelson didn't have a patch. False. The column is right, no patch. And he did say, kiss me, Hardy. He did not say, kismet, Hardy. That was the Victorians that changed that. I've learnt all of those this morning. You see, he did want his friend to kiss him as he was dying. They'd been friends for life. He wanted, don't come near me. Anyway, I've got a cold. Stay away. Right. HMS Victory, the world's oldest commissioned ship. Still a member of the Royal Navy. It's got a crew, a captain, everything. And it goes nowhere. But they have all sorts of important functions on it. It was started in 1759, and it was first a flagship in 1778. So it was actually 40 years old before it set off for the Battle of Trafalgar. Why did they have a navy battle in London? No, actually, Cape Trafalgar is off the southwest coast of Spain. It went there, 1805... The 21st of October, Nelson engaged the French and the Spanish, and the battle began. He must have had a head for heights. I'm sorry, you've lost me. If you think he went up in the crow's nest, he didn't. That was to pose for that column. Look, the column and Trafalgar Square came a long time after he died, all right? So there he was, walking around on the deck there, and he sent out that famous message from the back of this ship to all of his What? Send more beer. No, it was, England expects that every man will do his duty. Unfortunately, a Frenchman was also doing his duty that day, and he shot him. 3 hours later, he died. Well, he was walking around on the deck in his Admiral's uniform. I mean, he was kind of asking for it a bit, wasn't he? Anyway, the Victory was done. He'd won. They put him in a barrel of brandy. They carried out a few repairs in Gibraltar, sailed him back to Greenwich, and then he was buried in St. Paul's Cathedral. Bit of a hero's job. He's still there today. Carry on, Horatio. Yet another fantastic ship for you. This time, HMS Warrior. She's enormous. Just look at the size of her. She goes on forever. Emperor Napoleon III described her as the black snake amongst rabbits. A frightening sight. She was so far ahead of her time. 1860 she was built. Telescopic funnels. They went up and down. Why? Because she was both steam-powered and wind-powered, and the funnels went down to make way for the wind to blow her along. A retractable propeller, whether she was under steam or under wind. She had washing machines on board, a 9-hole golf course, everything. I'm joking about the golf course. She's just a very, very big ship. She was armoured, the first one to be armoured, and she carried more guns than any other British ship had ever carried. Not surprisingly, she never fired a gun in anger. Probably because of her size. I mean, can you imagine, you're sitting on your little foreign island, and this thing comes around the headland. And half an hour later, it's still coming round the headland. You say, it's all right, pal, it's yours, you can have it. Take the gold, key to the palace, take the lot. P.S. Love your ship. She actually eventually was turned into a giant housing estate for the Navy. And then she was turned into a school, and then they put concrete upon the top of her, and she became a platform for refuelling oil ships. I know, dreadful. But eventually she was dragged here and refurbished. Do you want some more ships? You're shipped out, you are. I don't think he's going to hear you. This is interesting. This is the Royal Navy Submarine Museum at Gosport. Do you know that submarines were looked down upon by the Navy? They sort of looked on them as with disdain. They said, a life underwater is not a life for a gentleman. They're underwater, they're underhand, and therefore they're not English. There's a bloke called J.P. Holland, who was an Irish-American, who started designing submarines, turn of the century. He was a bit of an IRA supporter at first, but then he started making submarines for the US Navy and then for the Royal Navy. And in here is the very first one, Holland 1. And this submarine is the basis for all other submarines in the world today. He got it absolutely dead right. Just have a look in there. Go on, have a look, and you'll see absolutely nothing. You see, it spent 70 years underwater, and just like the Mary Rose, it's being washed. But one day they'll get it out, and it'll be back on display. It had a crew of 8 and 2 officers and 3 mice. Well, it did. The mice were to detect the petrol fumes. They would squeak if they smelt any, and they'd die if they smelt a lot, and you know you're in trouble. Oh, come on, it was only mice. Do you know, obviously, when you're in a submarine, you're fearful of attack all the time. And up in Grimsby, they've got this display about how the fishing boats up there were turned into anti-submarine. You can get us there. You go on then.
Brilliant! How did you do that? Here we are, on a trawler that's been converted as a minesweeper in World War II. They were also escort craft, escorting the Royal Navy, a vitally important job. Over 1,300 trawlers were converted during the war. 57,000 men crewed them. 1 in 5 sank. 11,500 men dying. They dragged a big wire at the back that cut the mines. And another thing they did was to throw depth charges over the side against submarines. Can you imagine being in a sub like that? You can. Go on then. Brilliant, you've done it! A genuine World War II German submarine. And we've got a trawler just coming over the top of us. But that trawler's been converted into an anti-submarine vessel. It's going to throw a depth charge. Hold on. The depth charge is going to come in, and there's going to be a very big bang. Are you ready? It's not really that big a bang. It's all a bit too real for me. That was very loud. Hey, we're back in Gosport. Brilliant. Right, carry on with the story. X-class submarines. This was a bomb. 2 tons of high explosives on the side of the submarine. Just 4 people in it. They also had a diver who would get out and attach limpet mines to the bottom of boats. These were brave, brave people. This thing would sail underneath big battleships, drop its bombs, and if it could, sail off, away again. I say if it could, because lots of them got caught. This is where they lived, inside, very, very cramped conditions, and that's what powered them. It's actually a London bus engine. They're called X-class, midget submarines. That is not. That's an A-class, the Alliance, and it's huge. Travel all over the world. See, that's what they suddenly discovered, that you could travel long range with submarines. Nowadays, the submarines are twice the size of that. They make their own water, they make their own air. One of the American ones has a full-size basketball pitch in the middle of it. I know. And nowadays, they are noble, and they are very English. Carry on. Glorious old city walls of Southampton. Norman they were. You see, after 1066, Southampton became the most important port in the south, because it was from here that they traded with Normandy and later onto the Mediterranean. Lots of wealth, got wealth, you must protect it. Big walls, Norman walls, huge walls, 25 to 30 feet high. They went in a circuit of about 1¼ miles, and they had 7 main gates, lots of towers. Over to the north, there's one of the most ornate towers left in England. And they were well protected by water. You had a moat to the north and the east, and to the south and the west you had the sea and the River Test, which was here. It was tidal, and boats used to moor here. This is a replica of a 14th century merchant boat. Would have been here in the 1300s. Can you believe it? And it shows how close the sea used to be to the city walls. But all of this land over here is now reclaimed, office blocks and all sorts. Right, shall we move on? Jolly good. The lovely 14th century Wool House, said to have been built by the monks of Beaulieu Abbey. And you know why they built it, don't you? Oh, you do? Yeah. Summer holidays. No, it's called the Wool House because they used to trade wool from here. English wool all over the world to countries that made textiles. Lots of money in it. In fact, the Tron was kept here for a little while, you know. That's the King's weigh beam for weighing the wool and working out the custom duty. 1320, Edward II said only 8 ports in England are going to be allowed to deal in wool, and Southampton is one of them. Suddenly, lots of people got very, very rich. 16th century, the wool trade went into a decline, and Southampton also went into a decline. 18th century, they kept French prisoners in there, hundreds of them. Most of them died from jail fever. I'll tell you about jail fever. The principal symptom of jail fever is being hit on the head with a big wooden stick. Yeah. And at the beginning of this century, a man called Eric Roland Moon started making single-seater monoplanes in there. I know, apparently it's true. Well, there you go, the Wool House, what? Oh, it's all the leaflet, all the different things you can do and go and sit. In fact, this one's fascinating. Hey, you could do these Titanic tours, you know, go all the way around the city looking at different things to do with the Titanic. This is Cumberland Place, and there's something right here that's to do with the Titanic. So what happened? 10th of April, 1912, the Titanic set sail from Southampton, but it's about an hour late because it nearly bumps into the back of the New York as it was mooring. A bad omen, some people thought. They wouldn't have been far wrong, would they? It went to Cherbourg, and then it went to Queenstown, picked up more passengers, and then set sail for New York. On the 14th of April, it hit an iceberg. 11:40 at night. 2:20 the following day, it sank. But the musicians played on. And this is a little memorial to those musicians. Very nice. Now, where would you like to go on the Titanic tour? You want to go and see the ship? Yeah, all right, yeah. I'll tell you what, go and have a look round the docks. Hey, this is lovely. Westgate Street. Did you find the Titanic? Did you? You haven't by any chance been drinking, have you, in that lovely Tudor pub up there? I have. Anyway, this is wonderful. Not just because of the Tudor Merchants Hall here, and not because of this splendid sort of Norman gate there. No! Because all the information's written on the walls. Look, it says that it was built in 1634. Alderman Edward Exton owned it. And on this one, they've got a plaque telling you that in a cellar near this place, Walter Taylor and his son, Walter Taylor, did all sorts of inventions. And they were the first people to actually guarantee their workmanship. Through here, though, through this gate, originally Norman, Henry V, with his soldiers behind him, on his way to Azincourt. He did, he came through here, I could touch it. Brilliant. Because this was the West Gate, and this was where the West Quay was, the only commercial quay that Southampton actually had. And on August the 15th, 1620, the Pilgrim Fathers, who had come from Boston on the Speedwell, met up with the Mayflower and headed off for America. But of course they stopped at Plymouth on the way, and that's another story. If only every place had all the information written on the wall, my life would be simple, wouldn't it? Talking of simple things, I promised you I'd do Canute, didn't I? Right, that's next. King Canute, the Viking King, the much-loved King of England. In fact, so adored by his people and his courtiers that they thought he was more powerful than nature itself. So he brought his throne, some say to Bosham, which is a little village that way, some say to Southampton, sat it on the beach and said, "Tide, I command thee not to come in." And of course, it did. Thus proving that he was just a human being after all. Blimey, it's got a bit chilly out on the water. What? It's not the end of the programme. Why are we on a boat? No, I know it's not the end of the programme, but we have to do it because we're going out to this fantastic castle. I knew you'd be pleased. Yeah, well, we started the programme with Henry VIII, and we're going to finish the programme with Henry VIII. I'll look after you, don't I? This is Hurst Castle. Built on that wonderful gravel spit that comes right the way out into the Solent. Can you see it? Fantastic. What a defensive site. I'll explain that in a minute. 1544, Henry VIII built it. It was one of a whole chain of castles that he built along the south coast. And you know why he built them, don't you? It was because he liked mixing cement. Yeah, he did. He had a cement mixer at Hampton Court. He was always just playing. Did he, heck? He's the King of England. He told people to build castles. He just paid for them, that's all. Everything was going wonderfully in Henry VIII's little world until he annulled his marriage with Catherine of Aragon. Now, she was the aunt of the King of Spain, Charles V, and he had just signed a treaty with the King of France, Francis I. Big powers together. At the same time, the Pope issued a papal bull saying Henry VIII is excommunicated. All of a sudden, the whole of Europe hated him. And he said, "I don't know what I've done wrong. They don't like me anymore, but I'm going to have to build some castles because I think they're going to attack me." So he built this one here. And look why he built it here. There is the Isle of Wight. just a few yards away. And this is the entrance to the Solent. You stick guns up here, you could stop anything from coming in. Quite brilliant. 100 years later, 1648, Charles I is on the Isle of Wight having a bit of a holiday in a prison. And they bring him here, and they bang him up here for a little while, and then they take him on a day trip to London, where he goes and visits a court, and they find him guilty of being Charles I. And then he gets axe fever. Now, you know what that is, don't you? The main symptom of that is your head being detached from your body. But he was here. It's huge. We should have a look round. Because of its superb defensive position, the castle was used throughout the centuries, right the way up until the Second World War, when 161 men were stationed here. The Victorians added to the castle massively. They put 34 guns in, including these beauties. Look at the size of that! Designed to blow holes in big French iron ships. But actually, during the First World War, armed 24 hours a day. They would fire these for 3.5 miles. These copper things down the side fit into grooves within the cannon itself, and that makes the shell spin as it comes out of the cannon, and that way you can make the shell more accurate. Hey, clever stuff. I reckon this must be the best positioned defensive castle in the whole of the country. Now, get the Sunseeker, because I'm ready for a first-class seat, a gin and tonic, and watching a movie. All right? Just do it. This is not the Sunseeker, is it? You thought the ferry had nicer colours. So this is my first-class seat. What about the movie? What am I watching? And the gin and tonic?